Welcome to the very first Mountford Chambers podcasts. Tonight we'll be talking about pupillage. When we were discussing it around the table before we began, we were wondering whether we should just each give a little bit of a talk on pupillage or whether this ought to be more of a kind of a round table discussion, although we're not sitting around a round table, we're sitting around a rectangular table, but I think you get the point. And when I say we, there's me, I'm Alan Kent, and I'm in charge of pupillage insofar as I am the chairman of the Pupillage Committee. With me this evening are Joe Hingston, who's one of the tenants in Chambers.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Joe. Good to see you.
And you, Alan, and everyone else here.
And we have Ben Brown.
Hello, Alan. Joe, great to be here. Thank you.
And Fiona Clegg.
Hello, lovely to be here.
But what we've also done is we've asked Anthony to come in to the podcast this evening as well, who is one of our current pupils. And in fact, this evening we're going to be making a decision on whether or not to take him as a tenant. So he might sound a little bit nervous, and I can promise you that he will be on his very best behaviour in the circumstances.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me.
The day today is Wednesday the 12th of January. I say that because last night we had a virtual pupillage open evening on the on Zoom, and I think it was pretty well attended, wasn't it?
It was. There were lots and lots of people interested, and we had a really good turnout.
And so anybody that was on that and listening to this podcast, this probably won't tell them too much more information than they received yesterday. But if you didn't manage to attend yesterday and you're interested in pupillage with us at Mountford Chambers, could I please invite you to go onto the Mountford Chambers website, which is very easy to navigate. When you open it up, you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen at the top, we've got a section on recruitment. And if you just click on that, the third item down there is pupillage. Click on that, and that will tell you everything that you need to know about pupillage at Mountford Chambers. One of the most important aspects, I think, is the financial side of things. We are currently offering 2 pupillages for October of 2022, that's this year, and 2 for October of 2023. And we guarantee £2,500 a month for each pupil for the first 6 months, when of course they're not able to earn any money because they're not allowed to go on their feet at that point. But for the second part of their pupillage, which is 10 months, we guarantee earnings of £2,500. So Anthony, dumping you in it, how's it work for you?
Financially speaking?
Yeah.
Yes, it's been fine. I think the aim is, once one gets on one's feet, the first couple of months, the guaranteed earnings help, but then you should be earning more than the guaranteed earnings, and it's certainly been the case for me. And things are, of course, tight financially at the criminal bar in comparison to other parts of the legal profession, but it's certainly been a manageable situation for me, and the quality and the enjoyment I get out of the job means I don't think too much about it.
It's all worthwhile.
Yeah, and Anthony was being completely genuine when he said that. And it's got nothing to do with the decision we're going to make in about half an hour's time. So what can we expect, Fiona, with pupillage? When someone starts out as a pupil, do we expect the final polished product?
Absolutely not. It's our job to do that part of the polishing. And what we're looking for are individuals who are genuinely committed to the criminal bar, that it's something that they want to get stuck in with. And through the pupil supervisors and the advocacy programme we run, that polish really comes through from that. So certainly not the polished article in the first instance.
And now what you do, I know, because I join in when I can, is weekly sessions, don't you, with the first 6-month pupils?
We do, yes, and it's a programme we're particularly proud of, and it's evolved over the years. But we have weekly sessions with our first 6 pupils. We will have theory sessions, so we might, for example, look at the law around bail or other topics that will come up once they're on their feet. And then the following week there'll be a an exercise for them to do, and it will be as lifelike as possible so that they can have that chance of making the mistakes in that environment and correcting them, ready to get on their feet.
Because what you do is you give people, in effect, a brief and say, well, these are your instructions, these are the facts of the case, and we want you, for example, to do a bail application.
Absolutely, and we try to make it as lifelike as possible, make that distinction from bail applications and exercises people may have done on the bar course, and we'll throw some curveballs along the way of the type of instructions you may get at courts. But the brief itself is as real as it can be, and we find that it works really well.
We did one recently, didn't we, which was a half-time submission, and actually, to my surprise, I don't know whether it was to yours as well, and yours, Ben, is that the pupils doing it had not actually ever done a half-time submission or even seen one being done.
Yeah, no, that's quite right, Alan. And I think the benefit of doing that exercise is we're able to extend it beyond what they've covered at bar school. And it really gives, I think, pupils a great opportunity to touch upon areas that they've not done before. And I think also what we do try and do in the sessions as well when we give feedback is we try and sort of go beyond the usual Hempel method feedback that pupils would receive with their INs, and we try to make the feedback a bit more extensive, and we don't really limit it to 1 or 2 points. We try and offer as much extensive feedback on their advocacy, whether it be their presentation or whether they've perhaps not picked up on a key preparation point in the exercise. We really try and offer as much extensive feedback as we can, and I think from the years that we've done it, I think it really pays dividend, and you can see the development and the progress from when pupils first join Chambers to when they get on their feet and then beyond. Certainly, obviously, I'm sure Anthony wouldn't mind, but we've certainly seen the progress, I would say, in his work since he joined to where he is now, and it seems to work very well.
Well, there's a massive disconnect between the BTPC and getting on your feet, and it's so important, I think, for Chambers to fill in that gap in terms of training, because leaving with a qualification for the BTPC doesn't leave you equipped to be able to get on your feet. And I think it's the job of Chambers really to fulfil the remainder or the balance of the training that's required.
And we do that as well by when, for example, the half-time submission, when we heard those, they were all actually this year's pupils very, very good, bearing in mind they'd never seen one before. But what we then did is I then did one in the way that I would do it, and then it enabled them to see how someone with more experience would handle that particular situation. And then we sent them away, and then the following week asked them to repeat the exercise, and it just shows that they listened to the way it was done, and they were so much better the second time around, even though I have to say they were very good the first time around. So what we don't do is just expose them to a particular exercise and then just move on to the next one. We make sure that we give them the proper feedback, show them the way that we think it should be done, and that will then help them in due course. I
must admit, I did actually ask the first sixers to pass on their notes from your example, Alan, for me to use going forward in practice. And I think that collaborative approach is very much central to the advocacy training. And indeed, I think what we do is identify gaps from the training one gets from the BPTC and see what common problems come up, especially in second six, and then try to remedy them and give training about them before the pupils get on their feet, which certainly for me was very useful.
Good. And what we also make sure we do as well is not only prepare people in terms of the advocacy exercises that go on a weekly basis all the way through their first six, but also in the second six as well, because no one at the bar is the finished article, and we all have things to learn every day. But we do prepare people for the second six by making sure that before they are on their feet, they go with more senior people throughout their whole of their first six, and then more junior people towards the end of their first six, to see what life is like in the magistrates' courts in and around London. It's not just about advocacy, it's also about teaching the realities of day-to-day being in court. I often try and compare
being in the magistrates' court in your second six to sort of being dropped in A&E on a Friday night as a junior doctor and sort of working your way through the chaos and the mayhem. And it's not just about being able to stand on your feet and present a particular argument. It's about dealing with difficult situations that are the reality of the criminal bar, really, especially at the magistrates' court end.
I think even down to knowing how to get your case called on, where to go, how to contact probation, all of those unknowns. If you have that exposure, which we're particularly good at doing at Mountford, it helps to instill that confidence that when it's your turn and there's no one else with you, you've got a much better idea what's going on.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even small things like knowing where the custody suite is in a magistrate's court or knowing what the room code is. I think sort of sharing that sort of knowledge, I think really gives people a bit more confidence even before they go to those courts for the first time themselves.
And is there much form filling as well when you go to magistrate's court for the first time?
Certainly, yeah, Alan. I mean, it depends if you're doing a first appearance, for example, and the matter stays in the magistrate's court for trial, then you have the PET form that will need completing, and we certainly do an exercise with regards to how that should be filled in the most appropriate way. And then, of course, if the matter's then being sent to the Crown Court, completing the better case management form as well. So we certainly try and give the pupils an opportunity to look at those forms in the sessions that we do, and we certainly do a session where they fill out those forms, have a go at it, and then we sort of provide a bit of feedback on how they've completed the forms and sort of what issues they may arise from how they've completed those forms.
One of the funnier things you see in the magistrates' court, especially at my level, is some privately paid silk suddenly comes along to represent somebody at first appearance, and you are then teaching the silk how to fill in the PET form or the BCM form, which has certainly happened to me a few times, being a bit starstruck by a very, very eminent silk.
Not me, by the way.
Not at all.
Not starstruck, not eminent, not privately paid.
No comment.
But what happens is that at the moment Joe's got a pupil with him, and she is obviously very lucky because Joe's involved in a murder trial at the Old Bailey. So she's with Joe watching that, been there for a few weeks now, and then suddenly it's going to hit her, I think, in probably mid-end of February when you say, right, okay, no more Old Bailey for you, off you go to Uxbridge Magistrates Court.
It is, and it's very glamorous. It's very glamorous, kind of sauntering round Central Criminal Court and observing a murder trial. But that's not the reality come the beginning of April, and so I've made it very clear, or I have a habit of whenever the opportunity arises for my pupils to go and watch and observe proceedings in the magistrates' court and get a feel for what's more likely to happen, or the type of case they're more likely to be involved in come April. So although Chambers does a broad range of work from, let's say, frauds at Southwark, business crime at Southwark, to murders at the Old Bailey, we recognise that that's not going to be the type of work that a pupil will be dealing with in their second six. And as much as possible, although they can see these interesting cases, it's equally important that they get a flavour for the type of work that they'll be dealing with in the magistrates' court.
And I think that's what happened with you as well, wasn't it, Anthony? You sort of went from watching trials being conducted at quite lengthy trials to then suddenly off you are in the magistrates' court. But I say suddenly because what we don't do is drop you in to the A&E department of a busy hospital. We make sure that you are prepared for it by sending you along with the people who are immediately above you, so people who are just completing their second six. And that's what you learn from them. You learn how to conduct yourselves in the magistrates' court, and then you'll pass that on to the next generation as well, won't you?
I think the structure of pupillage at Mountford Chambers is a real benefit of being a pupil here, because my first supervisor was 33 years cool, I believe. He won't thank me for saying that. And in the first 3 months, so between October and Christmas, I went along to a murder trial up in Warwick. I saw him doing a lot of heavy hitting stuff. And then come January, I was actually one of Joe's ex-pupils. And Joe, of course, is 15 years cool, so closer to the level that I was going to be at come April. So I got to see slightly less high profile work, I'm sure. Again,
I dragged him around A&E. Good.
So seeing a lot of mentions in the Crown Court, for example, sentences, the sort of thing I might be doing towards the end of my second six. And then I'd say the months before I got on my feet, it was every day with the third six pupils as they were, or the first or second year tenants in the magistrates court every day, seeing trials, seeing first appearances, seeing how to fill in the forms. So really it's a very clear graduated process, I feel, the structure of pupillage here, because I started doing serious hard-hitting work or seeing it, and then it gradually went down to Crown Court, knockabout Crown Court work, mentions, etc., to then the magistrates court work, to then doing it myself. And of course I'm now hopefully going back up the other way in the trajectory of my career, depending on how this evening goes.
So tell us about WhatsApp groups, because I'm on the periphery in so far as obviously there's a Chambers Tenants WhatsApp group, but there are also some others, aren't there?
There are multiple WhatsApp groups, much like Westminster. We have
and garden parties as well.
We have a WhatsApp group which has the two most junior tenants, all the third six pupils and all the first six pupils, as we are at the moment. That's the current setup of it. So you have an opportunity for us as the third sixes to ask the people above us for advice, but then you also have the first sixes being able to get advice on anything from the most junior tenants to the third sixes. And then even amongst themselves. So that WhatsApp group is particularly useful, and especially when you first get on your feet almost every day. The most important application to have on your laptop is not the common platform. The most important application is WhatsApp on the laptop. So while you're sat in the conference looking like you're advising the client very learnedly and earnestly, you're actually typing away on that WhatsApp group asking, could we run modern slavery in these circumstances? Here's a brief précis. Or indeed, in the middle of a cross-examination, you may have the WhatsApp application up, just in case there's any last-minute queries you need to ask people about. And usually someone's available and willing to take either a WhatsApp or a call. And that's a really important part of it. It's a very collaborative and supportive environment. And
not just for work purposes, because I did hear something this evening about a junior tenants karaoke.
Yes, that's tomorrow.
What's your song, Fiona?
I think it's probably going to have to be Queen or the Spice Girls, but Ginger Spice is normally my go-to.
Thought the answer to that was going to be no comment for a second.
Oh no, diving straight. If we're going, we're going.
Angling for an invite, Joe, eh?
Yeah, always for a
just out of that group, Joe.
No, you know when you're getting too old when you're not including in the junior tenants WhatsApp groups.
Well, on the note of the WhatsApp group, the junior tenants one, it was meant to be up to 10 years cool, but those are 11 and 12 years cool are clinging on. Don't want to get booted out, so we're not that strict.
And I think that really shows the atmosphere in Chambers anyway, because people are friends actually, not just professional colleagues, but also friends. And of course, I know that Ben and Fiona, you were pupils together, and you've remained close friends right the way through your pupillage and beyond, which is lovely to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think hopefully we're going to be co-defending, I think, at some point soon, Fiona and I. And I think it's really nice to see the development and to have that sort of friendly relationship there as you sort of progress through this profession, really.
Yeah,
so,
well, let's hope it's not a cutthroat, otherwise you'll fall out.
we no longer be friends, Alan. And we're just also on that point, if I may, also what we like to do with the advocacy sessions is get other members of Chambers involved in that as well, more senior members who sort of come along and do guest sessions, really, and they sort of pick a topic that they're interested in. And I think that also makes for a really good way of the pupils to meet other members of Chambers if they're out and about in different parts of the country when they come in and do a guest session. That seems to work really well, and we try and do those towards sort of the end of the pupillage process when they're with us, which seems to work really well.
I was very grateful to be allowed myself to actually run one of the advocacy sessions. I'd noticed that breach of bail as a topic is something I went into my second six not knowing a huge amount about. You never taught it at a bar school or anything like that, so I wanted to do a session mainly about the law and the practicalities around doing those sort of hearings, and Fiona and Ben very kindly let me do that. And that's a good example of how welcoming Chambers is to pupils Allowing peoples to run sessions like that, allowing peoples to come to all of the social events and to make sure they really do feel part of Chambers and can build relationships with people before we go into our tenancy interviews. Because
the bar, I think, is a difficult place to make friends and sort of grow your own
it is for
network.
Me.
It is.
And again, anyway, we make friends. I can't understand why, but
because we're a scattered bunch, aren't we? And we're all independent practitioners. So in many ways, it can feel like we're all doing our own thing and we're left alone. But I think the important thing we have in Chambers is ensuring that we're, no matter where we are, we're still in communication with each other and still able to lean on each other or seek advice when we need it. So I think that's really important. We recognise that. It
is important. It's right. It's a very collaborative atmosphere, and we do get on with each other, and we all put ourselves out to help other people. And as Anthony was really referring to, it's a question of giving something back. And I think the important thing about the bar is we've all been there, we've all been through pupillage, we've all suffered pupillage back in the old days. Is much more different now than it was then, because I think pupils are treated very, very differently now than they were back in the day. But it's always a question of giving things back. So we've all been there, seen it, done it, experienced the highs, experienced the lows. And it's important to pass all of that on, and Anthony is already passing that on, which is lovely to see.
I think that's something we look for in pupils as well. People that do want to get involved are going to give back, and from the off we very much want a culture of you get on well with your co-pupil. We've never had the environment where you're pitted against one another, and you do hear some horror stories, but as you said earlier, Ben and I were co-pupils and still standing.
Just about. And we're not either a pupillage factory. I mean, you do hear stories, as Fiona says, of people not getting on particularly well together or pitted against each other. It never happens here. We take 2 pupils, because of the amount of work we've had over the last year or so. We took on a third 6 people from outside, and she fitted extremely well, and she's now a tenant in Chambers. But what we do not do is just fill Chambers with fodder, if you like, and pupils just to go off and keep solicitors happy by going off to magistrates court. We take pupils on who we consider to be potential tenants.
Yeah, I completely agree, Alan. And given how much I think we all put into the advocacy programme within Chambers, we really want the pupils to succeed.
And how can they possibly fail, Ben, with yours and Fiona's tutelage?
Again, I've got no comment on that as well.
Well, the fact is they haven't, because we've taken on so many people that you two have been responsible for training. Present company maybe except.
Well, it's a good measure of how many pupils you take on and then how many of them succeed in getting tenancy. And we've got a pretty good strike rate, I think, if that's if that's what you can call it, in terms of taking on pupils who've become young junior tenants in Chambers.
Yeah, absolutely. On that positive note, I think that probably wraps up all we need to tell you on this podcast about pupillage in Mountford Chambers. No doubt there will be other podcasts to follow on other topics. This was the first one, so forgive us if we've got it all completely and utterly and hopelessly wrong. But if you like listening to it, then hopefully you'll tune in next time to whoever might be presenting the next one. So from me, Alan Kent, and from everybody else on the team here at Mountford Chambers, we look forward to receiving your applications for pupillage for autumn of this year or the autumn of next year. Thanks for listening. Have a good evening. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.